welcome back to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, the one and only working class podcast. We are the Blue Collar Ballers, John and DJ. Check us out on our Facebook page at Armchair Fantasy Football, on Twitter at Armchair FF Pod. I'm on Twitter at Armchair Kingpin. John is on Twitter at John2977. You can email us at armchairfb@gmail.com. You can find us on Spotify.
New site.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Podbean. And you can find our videos on YouTube. Just search Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, and we'll be right there. Before we get to the news, we just want to talk about today's theme for the episode. It's all about having panic attacks and players that might be off to a rough start or have disappointed thus far. So we're going to roll through a bunch of those guys and kind of give you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much we're panicking on those players. And also, before we get to news, John, would you like to recap the fun and exciting Monday Night Football game?
Yeah, we can. Didn't expect that.
We got to talk about it, dude. It's a game that happened.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. I was.
It kind of was a game that happened. It definitely happened. That's about all it did. Cincinnati. I am beginning, and Andrew and I, my son and I, had a conversation today, and we were wondering if, in fact, Cincinnati has decided to go the way of the Miami Dolphins and just tank this entire season.
0-4.
0-4. Joe Mixon, I mean, we had such high hopes for him. We will talk about him a little later. 15 carries for 62 yards, so, 4.1 yards a carry is not bad, but just no touchdowns. Four receptions for 1 yard. He just gets stymied by the Pittsburgh defense, which, thus far has not been very good, but they looked like world beaters against the Bengals. Andy Dalton is just, again, conversation my son and I had is, I think it's time. They need to move on from Andy Dalton, and I think, frankly, they might need to do it this year.
Tank for Tua.
And maybe even right now. Dalton is just, 21 for 37, 171 yards, and an interception. That's about as bad as it gets, man. And even Tyler Boyd, Mr. Steady Eddie Tyler Boyd, only had 3 catches for 33 yards. John Ross, 3 for 36. Injured his shoulder. Nothing good from the Cincinnati side. On the Pittsburgh side, John, I don't know who's worse, Mason Rudolph or Tim Tebow. Mason Rudolph's pretty bad. Every one of his passes were for about 5 yards. His average attempt was 8.2, but it just looked ugly. Jalen Samuels and James Conner had days, though. They had pretty good days, and a lot of it was in the passing game. Conner had 8 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. He had 10 for 42 on the ground. So Conner actually looked really good. Jalen Samuels, 8 catches for 57 yards. He had 10 carries for 26 yards. 2.6 yards a carry, not great, but added a touchdown as well. I think the big takeaway here is that Mason Rudolph is not a good quarterback, and he might really hurt Juju Smith-Schuster, which we'll talk about when we talk about players we're panicking over. Juju is definitely on that list. But yeah, what were your takeaways, John, from Monday Night Football?
Cincinnati's woes come from their offensive line. 8 sacks were given up by them, so Dalton was running for his life. Mixon can't get out of the backfield, or if he did, it was very minor. Look at 3 run yard here and there. A lot of their issues stem from the offensive line here. Another thing we'll talk about when we go into
Dalton also fumbled too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I
mention that.
The team is just bad on the defensive side and bad on the offensive side.
Meanwhile, the Steelers' D looked swarming here, and I don't know if Minkah Fitzpatrick makes that much of a difference because they haven't looked good to date. So has he completely turned this defense around, or is it because they played the Bengals?
I think a little bit is both. They brought in Minkah, was a first-round pick by Miami. he was selected as a corner, but can play all 4 positions in the defensive backfield, and they have moved him to safety, and he looks comfortable there.
Yeah.
I think it does make a difference because he covers more than half the field, but at the same time they played the Bengals, and I think they exploited them here.
Yeah, and the Connor and Samuels situation, it's great what they did. They won the game, but they can't play the Bengals every week. So I'm hoping, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. I'm hoping that at some point Pittsburgh, I feel like they're going to be in games that they're going to be behind because this formula, ask the Minnesota Vikings, is not sustainable. So yeah, it worked today, but I don't think you can look at James Conner and Jalen Samuels as every week their starts that are going to give you this kind of production. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of where I stand on it. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of where I stand on it.
I
daydreaming over there?
No, just a long day today. I'm just.
Well, get in the game, bro.
I'm sorry.
So how do you feel about that, John?
I don't have an opinion, I guess.
Well, that's why we do this podcast, John, is to have an opinion.
No, this game I just wasn't thrilled about it. I watched the first half. It was one of those games that didn't go scripted like I thought it would, and that's even looking at stats and everything. I just think Pittsburgh is still going to be hurting here with all the trades they made. They got an easy matchup last night. I thought the Bengals defense was better than this. I knew that their offense
They're
was...
not.
They're not.
They're bad.
I thought the Bengals offense would make something happen being behind, but Pittsburgh's defense is... I would rate them middle of the pack still. Because they played Cincinnati, bad offensive line. They got in all the time, pressured Dalton. And Dalton, when he's pressured, is awful. He's not a QB that performs well under pressure.
I think a lot of people, John, are going to run to the waiver wire tonight as we're taping here Tuesday night and spend an awful lot of fab money on Jalen Samuels. And frankly, I've thought about it too. I just don't know if he's a every week starter. And I don't know if this game is an outlier because of game script. And if they're down a lot, is he going to be a part of the game plan? Maybe it's Connor that's not, because Connor, but they're both versatile.
The thing about Connor I've heard every week is he's dealing with some injury issues. It's minor issues, but I'm wondering if they're scaling him back to limit his injuries.
He got the same exact usages. They literally had 8 receptions and 10 carries each.
So I'm wondering if they're just splitting this backfield to keep the longevity of Connor.
And they both had 8 targets too.
Yeah.
It was identical.
So I'm almost thinking this could turn into a running back by committee.
It could, but if you are in a game where they're playing from behind, I feel like Samuels is more likely to get phased out of the game plan than Connor, because Connor's more of a traditional running back. But that's a big question mark. I'm not so sure I want anybody on this Pittsburgh offense outside of Juju, and even as we see now, he's at this point, is he an every week starter? So interesting Monday night game. I watched a good portion of it with my son, and being a Bengals fan, he didn't really enjoy too much of it, and neither did I, being a fantasy owner of anybody on either of these teams not named James Conner or Jalen Samuels. If I were Pittsburgh, I would really work on Mason Rudolph and his ability to throw down the field, because they will be in games, John, where they can't do this, and he's going to have to put his big boy pants on and throw down the field.
Well, the big boy pants will have to go on next week as they play the Ravens.
Yeah, well, the Ravens are pretty bad against the run, so you might see a similar game script next week.
But if you have a team that stacks the box, force Mason Rudolph to throw, he's in trouble.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But they are susceptible to the run. Baltimore is, so you might see more of the same next week. But you're not going to see it every week. That's my guess, or my prediction, or my expert take. So let's talk about. You're not panicking, are you, John? I know you kind of, I don't know if you fell asleep over there. Are you ready to do a podcast today?
Yeah, let's go over news.
Let's not panic about John's podcast, but we want to do news at the end, or you want to jump into the panic room?
No, we'll do news. It ties in with last night's game. There's news very short today. Not much out there. There's one major thing. But we'll go over the few things first. Mike Tomlin said James Conner is still being evaluated for his ankle. So, like I said, I think I could still see his timeshare coming here. I think they're going to take it easy on him. They lost him, 2-3 games last year. I think they're going to play it smart here, and they're not going to, not going to say phase him out, but wait see how the week progresses. But I think he will be something to keep an eye on. But I think handcuffing, if you don't have Jalen Samuels for James Conner this week, it would be the right thing to do.
And if you would have followed my lead, guys, and listened to what I tell you on a weekly basis and have already handcuffed him, you wouldn't have had to pay a ton of fab like you're going to have to do now for him. So I know we were in our tag team league. Samuels hit the waiver wire, and I scooped him up pretty quick for, I don't know, next to nothing, if anything.
$1, I think?
Yeah, if that. But now, if you're doing that, you're paying a lot more. So.
As DJ mentioned, John Ross got hurt last night with a shoulder injury. There's been no update since last night, so stay tuned for that. We'll find out his extent as the week goes on. And then the last bit of news, there is trade grumblings about an AJ Green trade possibly happening.
Yeah, so there was an editorial on, I think it was the Washington Post. I could be wrong. So that's not confirmed, but I think that's where it was from. And it basically said, is now the time, or it now is the time to trade AJ Green. And I completely agree with that. You got two good receivers in John Ross and Tyler Boyd. I think at this point you're already playing for next year. You know you need a quarterback, and maybe you can get a first for AJ Green. Probably not. Probably a second, maybe even a third for him. But I think it's time to refocus that team. AJ Green is, on top of that, never won you a thing. So I think it's a good idea. Where could he end up, though, John, is the fun stuff to talk about. New England? Are we just assuming New England?
New England could be one.
Is Oakland going to try to get back that number one wide receiver that they lost with Brown? I mean, they gave up a lot for Brown, so do they want to take that gamble again?
I don't know if they take that gamble, but it'd be a smart move for them. Another team possibly, I would think, is possibly the Jets.
Jets, I guess that's a possibility. Yeah, I don't know, man. It'd be interesting to see where he would end up. It would be fun to see him in Houston, with DeAndre.
I don't think Houston will go after him. And
Jacksonville would be a good landing spot.
Jacksonville would be a good spot.
That actually would be pretty fun.
They don't have a solidified number one there.
Gunter and AJ would be a pretty good tag team there. But yeah, so we'll see if that happens. This isn't anything that came out of Cincinnati's team or organization or front office. This was just an editorial that I saw today, and it definitely piqued my interest. And as I got to thinking about it, I said, yeah, this is probably the best thing for that team to do right now. And there's going to be buyers on AJ Green.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's start panicking, or not panicking, depending on where these guys end up on the scale. So once again, we're going to rate these guys 1 to 10 on the panic scale.
10 being the highest, panic?
10 being the most panic.
A heart
attack? Yes, a panic heart attack, or a panic attack, I guess. So we're going to start with a guy that we were just talking about, and that's James Conner, John. James Conner out of Pittsburgh. Are you panicking on James Conner? If so, why?
I am panicking on James Conner. We are not seeing the level of production that we saw last year from him, and I think a lot of that has to do with two people, Antonio Brown and Big Ben. We knew Antonio Brown was gone regardless, but Big Ben being out for the season is gone. I think that's the biggest blow to him, is if you don't have that productive pass game, it's not going to open up the running game. And Mason Rudolph here is clearly not the answer. Yes, he looked decent last night, but I don't see his level of production he was doing this year. So a panic for me number would probably be a 7.
I am not panicking on James Conner. This team is obviously committed to the run. They proved that last night. James Conner is their lead back. Again, I think if the game script goes into a more pass-heavy offense, I think that benefits Conner more than it does Samuels. I could be wrong there. That is kind of a coin flip, where it's still early in the new offensive process that they have going there. What I'm not worried about, and this is the big hook for me for Connor, John, is his next several matchups are Baltimore, which is the 6th worst against the run. They have the Chargers, who are pretty good against the run, middle of the pack, but then Miami, who's the absolute worst against the run. Indy, 9th worst. The Rams, 7th worst. Then they have Cincinnati a couple games later, the 2nd worst. So if you look at his schedule, it's pretty favorable. I think the toughest run D that he plays is Cleveland in week 13, and week 16, championship week, is against the Jets. So that one's a little concern there, but if you look at his schedule, it's a pretty favorable schedule, and they definitely want to run the ball. And I think James Conner's going to be fine. Is he going to be the RB1 that you drafted in the late first, early second? Maybe not, but I think he's a high-end RB2 this year, which is really all that you can ask for from an offense that has just plummeted. And with Mason Rudolph.
They were a top 5 offense last year. Now look where they are.
Right.
Middle of the pack, probably late pack.
It is not good. Not good at all. So let's go to his teammate, John, Juju Smith-Schuster. I'll start this one off. I own Juju Smith-Schuster, and I am in pretty heavy panic mode right now. And the reason, John, really is that after watching that game, Mason Rudolph, it reminded me of, I was watching Tim Tebow. I was watching a scheme where the offense had to be built very specifically around the fact that Mason Rudolph isn't really good at all. To me, I don't even know how they can go the rest of the season with this kid because his ability is so limited to basically 5-yard passes.
He has no deep ball.
He's thrown a couple of deep balls. He threw one to Deontay Johnson last night, who actually had a good game, and one to Juju last week. So he's good for like one a week, and you're really crossing your fingers and puckering your rear end that it's going to be Juju Smith-Schuster on a weekly basis. I hope, John, that they can continue to develop Rudolph and he continues to get more comfortable in the offense and he improves. If he does, that will help Juju. Juju is definitely the best talent on that offense. I think you would agree with that. But right now, as it stands, if I'm looking at it in freezing time, it's not good for Juju, and I'm very, very nervous. And my panic level, unless they can get Rudolph to be okay, we're never going to see a great performance from Rudolph. If they can get him to be passable, no pun intended, that would up my or lower my concern on Juju. But right now it's at an 8, and it's an 8 borderline 9. I am very scared of the fact that Mason Rudolph is just a bad quarterback. I don't know where you stand on Juju.
Juju scares me. I mean,
and frankly, his schedule's not great either, so that's a concern.
Target-wise, he was pretty consistent the first few games, and then this game he just completely dropped off compared to what he was. The target share is still there, I think. Like you said, though, Mason Rudolph at the helm, though, is concerning because he doesn't... I don't know if it's their... What's the word I want to use? Chemistry's not there. Maybe it'll improve. But this run game, if you're right about Connor, not panicking, and he opens up this run game, it should open up the pass game as well. But I think just maybe Mason Rudolph is just getting used to, possibly still overwhelmed at where he's at. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's not used to starting, but he's got to figure it out. But I'm worried about Juju until we see something different from Mason Rudolph, and it won't be this week, in week 5. I don't think Juju will come out of it this week. They face the Ravens, and the Ravens are a very good secondary. Might not be great against the run, but they have a good secondary, and keep your fingers crossed if Juju can turn it around.
I think, my gut tells me right now, and I'm not trading Juju because, number one, I am in a keeper league, and number two, I won't get the value that I should for him, especially in a keeper format. But I look at this, and I really honestly thought I was watching Tim Tebow, the way they built the offense to Rudolph's many, many weaknesses. So with that being said, I see a Demaryius Thomas with Tebow ceiling here, which wasn't that high.
It was like 1,100 yards.
He flashed, you know what I mean, here and there, but he wasn't
consistent,
a bankable every week asset. So that's where my concern lies. Moving on to another elite talent wide receiver, Odell Beckham Jr. John, he didn't look too good this week. Odell had 2 catches for 7 yards. 2 catches for 20 yards. The week before he was 6 for 56. The week before he was 6 for 161, so had a great game there. And the week before that, 7 for 71. So he's really only had 1 Odell game, and the rest of them were bad to me. Well, I won't say 7 for 71 is mediocre, but for Odell it is. So, are you concerned about Odell Beckham right now?
No. I would say like a 4. I think what they were trying to do, game plan this week, one, they do want to establish that run, and it showed this week with Chubb. They proved that they can run the ball. I think they want to establish the run, like I said. The other part of it is I think they want to spread the ball out more. I think teams are going to focus on Beckham because he's the number 1, but at the same point, if teams keep focusing on Beckham, then they're going to get burned by a Landry, and I think Beckham will bounce back because teams will shift now and not put everything on Beckham and play, you know what I'm saying, play honest coverage on both guys because they know that both receivers are elite. So I think that, honestly, Beckham will bounce back.
I don't agree, and I'll tell you why. Because I look at Beckham's schedule, John, and I see the next 5 games that he has, he plays 4 defenses that are top 5 against receivers. So now we're looking at week 11 when he plays Pittsburgh, which should be a boom game for him. But if we're looking at getting to week 11 and he doesn't perform against those 4 top 5 pass defenses,
that's half the season.
That's a bust year, bro. And when you look at the playoffs, John, you see week 14 against Cincinnati, which is a sneaky good pass defense, if you can believe that so far. But I think that's going to be an easy one. And then Arizona and then Baltimore. So I think he's got some good matchups in the playoffs, but in terms of overall season, I think you're gonna look back at this year as a failure for Odell Beckham. He might finish strong, but he's got that middle of the schedule, John, is really, really tough. And I haven't seen enough good Baker Mayfield to know that he's going to be able to support Odell Beckham Jr. And we saw good Baker Mayfield this week, and guess what? He didn't support Odell Beckham Jr. It was a big Jarvis Landry heavy day. So if that's how they're going to move the sticks is with Jarvis Landry and not with Odell, that's going to be even worse. I got him at an 8 as well, right up there with Juju Smith-Schuster. I know that's not a popular opinion, but just looking at the matchups, John, and you're a matchups guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding for Odell Beckham to be the guy that he was in New York when you knew Eli was going to target him. You do not know that about Baker Mayfield, and if in fact anything's been proven this year, it's that he's not consistently targeting.
No, we thought it was going to be Beckham, and it's gone the opposite way now. But it's one game, I think, too. So
it is. But if you look, John, he's had one good Odell Beckham's boom game, and it wasn't against. It was the defenses that he's going to play are a lot better than what he's played thus far, especially in that particular game. So I'm a little worried about him. But does that mean we're worried about Baker Mayfield, John? What are your thoughts on him right now? Now, where's your panic meter on Baker Mayfield?
I think Baker Mayfield. I'm gonna put. I know he's got tough matchups. He had tough matchups last year as a rookie. I'm putting him in the same boat as Beckham. I think they're just slow developing. Like I said before, they want to establish this run. The run will open up the pass game, and I think as long as Chubb keeps running the way he does, teams are gonna respect Chubb, and what they're gonna do is they're gonna play honest defense here. They're gonna have to cover the receivers. If not, they're gonna get burned by Chubb. So if you stack that box as well, you're gonna get burned on the pass. So I think Mayfield. I'm not putting him in top 5, but I think he still comes out with a decent season here. I think where his ADP was, yeah, he's not.
So is he top 12? Is he a QB1?
You're saying
in
top
your
12
opinion?
is QB1?
Yeah.
You'll be a low end QB1.
So, and this kind of ties in with Beckham, and I mentioned Arizona, John, in the playoffs for Beckham. Arizona's sneaky okay against wide receivers. It's actually, they're so bad against tight ends that it kind of,
and that's without Peterson.
Skews that a little bit, yeah. So week 5, the Browns play San Francisco, second best team against quarterbacks. Week 6, they play Seattle. Then week 8, they play New England. Guess where they rank?
New England?
Yeah.
Probably top 3.
Number 1 against quarterbacks this year. And then they play Denver. And then they play Buffalo. So you can see where I'm a little nervous about Baker. I think he's got the talent to give him a decent floor, but I'll put him at a 7 at the panic meter. When I'm looking at, and then, okay, he's got Pittsburgh too, which isn't great, but they're in the top half of the league,
It's a divisional rivalry.
In the way they looked, John, and I know it was Andy Dalton, but the way they looked last night, it looks like Pittsburgh's on the rise now. So they've got Miami week 12, which is going to be a great game for him, and Arizona week 15. But outside of that, maybe Cincinnati week 14. Outside of that, there's no easy matchups for Baker Mayfield. In the next 5 games, he's got some really tough ones, specifically against San Francisco, New England, Denver, and Buffalo. Those are going to be tough games, and you know that. So that's where I stand on Baker. I think he's cuttable, John. I really do. If you have Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, I just cut ties on Baker Mayfield, honestly.
I'm gonna get through the bye week first.
Yeah, I mean that's my take on it. I'm very scared about Baker Mayfield. So we're gonna stick with the Browns here, John. This guy kind of flashed this week, but prior to that, he has not looked good. And you own this player on in our league of record, John. Jarvis Landry. Where are you sitting on Jarvis Landry on the panic meter?
I would say.
Keep in mind, he's got those tough matchups coming as well.
Yeah, I would say a 6. Jarvis still seeing a decent amount of targets. Nothing like he saw early in his career, but he's seeing a decent floor. He's put up low teens for points. Not what I'd like to see, but he's still consistently putting up double digits for PPR.
Yeah, I mean he's been steady. He's got his targets have been 7, 7, 9, and 10. That's actually a really good target share right there. He's not converting all of those targets into catches. 4, 3, 3, and 8. That 3 out of 7 and 3 out of 9 weeks in week 2 and week 3 are a little scary. But I think that teams are going to double team Odell an awful lot, and I think it's going to open up for Jarvis Landry to be a solid floor type of guy. I think he's a 12 to 15 point type of week guy.
And that's about what he's averaging too. So
right.
I mean, like I said, I drafted him as a wide receiver too, and I'm happy.
Yeah, no, I think that'll hold, and I actually I would put him at a 3 honestly for my panic meter. I think Jarvis will be fine. He's not going to win you any weeks necessarily, but he's not going to lose you any either. So next up on the list, John, is one of your boys that you were very high on this offseason. I don't think you had the opportunity to draft him in any leagues, though.
No, he went too quick.
Maybe you were too high on him and touted him a little bit too much. But Calvin Ridley, John, last couple games have been pretty ugly for this kid. Week 3 at Indy in a really good matchup. He was only targeted once and caught that one target for just 6 yards. This past week, he went 3 for 32 on 6 targets, though. Just didn't turn those targets into much. Of course, week 1 and 2, he was solid. Did have a touchdown in both those games. Where I'm at with Ridley, I guess is not that high. It's a 5 because when I look at Ridley, I know that I'm not going to get double digits out of him every week just because there's the style of that Atlanta offense I've noticed over the years is if a defense starts to take a player out of the equation, they just say, fine, we're just not going to throw to that guy and we'll throw to these multiple other options that we have. So Some weeks you see Devonta Freeman catch a lot of passes. Some weeks you see Austin Hooper go off. Some weeks you see Calvin Ridley go off. And that's obviously going to siphon from one player to the other. Logic would tell you that. Matt Ryan's not going to have 5 guys catching the ball and getting 10-plus points a week, in fantasy. So my level of expectation is pretty low for Calvin Ridley. So that's why I have him basically at a 5. In terms of his schedule coming up, it's not great, but it's not bad. The next few games are semi-tough for him. Houston is not a great matchup. Houston's actually an okay matchup. Arizona, surprisingly, is not a great matchup for wide receivers. Then there's the Rams, who outside of last week had played really well against receivers. Then Seattle's really tough. Then they have New Orleans, who's actually a great matchup. Then Carolina. So I see a lot of red when I look at his matchups. And I see a lot of green at the end of the season against Tampa and New Orleans. So those are the games you start him on, I think, John. And the other games you just kind of fade him. But you never really know with Atlanta. You just don't know.
I'm not panicking too much on Ridley. The way Atlanta's playing right now, yeah, the win column doesn't reflect it, but Matt Ryan is lighting it up as it relates to attempts and passes completed. He has the most passes completed in the league, 124. Most pass attempts at 176. He's thrown for 4 straight games of 300 yards. There's going to be weeks. Is he a consistent target? No. But he's also a guy that can blow up and get numbers. I think he's fine as a wide receiver 2, possibly wide receiver 3, more wide receiver 3 at this point till he shows more flashes. But the way they're throwing the ball there, they have no run game. I still think he sees an average of 5 to 6 targets still.
Yeah.
And his big playability could, like I said, he'll pop off one week and he'll get you 25, 30, but don't expect the 15 to 20 every week.
Yeah, it's just not every week.
But the way they're throwing the ball here, I don't think it's nothing you have to be worried about. They've been playing behind more times than not so far.
And it's going to continue to get worse with Keanu Neal out.
Yes. So their defense is going to be obviously letting them more points, so they're going to be hucking the ball. It shows in Freeman as well. I mean, this team gets behind. They abandon the run. They go right to passes. And the only difference here is who's the beneficiary of the week.
There will be more than one. Too.
Yes. Like this past week it was Hooper and I believe Sanu.
Yeah. This isn't a minute. So what's your number on him?
I'd say like a 4.5.
Okay, I'm with you on that. This is not in Atlanta, a Minnesota level situation.
No.
So that's a segue. We're gonna go to. Are you feeling Thielen, John, or are you not feeling Thielen? He kind of mouthed off a little bit to the media this week, didn't he?
I wondered if Wonder Boy will get his way.
He basically said, you can't just run the ball all game for 180 yards every week and expect to win every week. You have to be versatile. You have to throw the ball. And what I said last week, John, was these guys are just running. They're not getting reps with their receivers and their quarterback. And when they need to go to the pass game, they're not going to be ready. And they weren't this week. So Thielen basically came out and said, we need to throw the ball more and we need to get the passing game going or we're going to lose a lot of games. And he didn't say that exactly. I'm paraphrasing. But that was the general gist of it. If you look at Thielen's numbers this year, John, if you look at it from a fantasy points standpoint, the first few weeks you felt pretty good about. But he was very touchdown dependent. He in week 1, he only caught 3 receptions on 3 targets for 43 yards. Touchdown saved his day. Week 2 was a little bit more traditional, 5 catches on 8 targets with 75 yards. And then in week 3, he had a great game, but 3 receptions on 5 targets for 55 yards, caught a touchdown, and of course, insult to Stephon Diggs, ran for 1 as well. And then this week, he didn't have those touchdowns to save his day, and it was 2 catches for 6 yards for a guy that you think that you're starting a wide receiver 2, a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 on a weekly basis with upside to be, maybe the wide receiver 1 overall for the week. Not happening this year. where do we go from here, John, with Thielen? And we'll tie in Diggs to that as well. I mean, we all know Stephon Diggs had a great game this week, but prior to that, it's been really bad. I own Stephon Diggs. Well, at least I did. I traded him because I just don't trust this offense. Week 1, two catches for 37 yards. Week 2, 1 reception for 49 yards. Touchdown saved his day. Week 3, 3 catches for 15 yards. And this week came to life a little bit, 7 for 108. A lot of garbage time stuff there, though, so he wasn't exactly game planned to get all of that. That was all in basically desperation mode. I got both of these guys at a 9. I don't trust this offense. And I know 1 week Diggs will be good and Thielen won't, and 1 week Thielen will be good and Diggs won't. I just don't know if they're ever going to be able to do it at the same time. And I think Minnesota, their coaching staff has killed Kirk Cousins' confidence.
It's okay. This is where it gets concerning. I touted Cousins, but I didn't think Shermer was serious when he said he was going to establish the run more. He is so.
Dude, he fired John DeFilippo because he passed the ball too much.
Yep. So this is where it got scary, and I'm going to go into some stats, which puts me at a 10 for these guys. Even Cousins, who I touted.
Oh, even higher than me. And
yes.
I did, and I traded Diggs for Darius Geis in a first-round pick in a keeper league.
If you're an owner, this is the heart attack right here. Cousins, Diggs, and Thielen. I'd be worried about all of them because why? Cousins has played 4 games. He only has 99 attempts. 99 attempts. Mariota's thrown the ball 119 times.
Yeah.
And he's hot garbage.
Marcus
and
Mariota.
And he has more touchdowns. More touchdowns.
He's having a better season.
And Dalton, who looked horrible, is having a better season.
You know what Marcus Mariota has done this year that Kirk Cousins hasn't? He's supported double-digit games from his top 2 receivers.
Okay, so 99 attempts. He is one of the worst in the league for attempts. Rosen, who's only played 2 games, like officially started 2 games, has 84 attempts. They're letting Rosen throw the ball.
We'll tie Cousins. Cousins is at a 10 for me. We'll tie him.
Yeah, I'm tying all of these guys to a 10 because here's the even more concerning part. So you would think, oh, is Cousins not be able to throw because he's getting sacked all the time? Wrong. Wrong. That's actually not the issue.
Yeah.
The issue here is Cousins has only been sacked 8 times. He's actually in the better echelon, is the word I want to use. Echelon of not being sacked. So he has the time to throw. He's just making bad throws. But
he sucks.
He sucks. So you start looking at these other quarterbacks. I hate to say it, but Bridgewater has played less games. And he has almost 87 attempts. I'm looking at other quarterbacks' numbers here. Trubisky, the guy's hurt.
The worst quarterback in the world. The guy that plays over there in Pittsburgh. Rudolph. He might be better than Kirk Cousins.
Joe Flacco.
He threw more passes.
Flacco has 148 attempts.
Joe Flacco's holding it down this year.
No,
man.
he
can't
is.
really disrespect
but
him.
Mariota.
He's supporting 2 receivers every week.
Mariota is playing better than him.
Marcus Mariota.
And here's another interesting stat. Ryan Fitzmagic has 52 attempts in the limited time he's played. So
that was a game and a half.
Thank you. That's where I'm trying to go with
It's
this.
just bad over there in Minnesota.
There is one quarterback worse than him, though.
Who's that?
Luke Falk.
Luke Falk is literally the worst quarterback of all time. Literally. And so I would think that now Cousins has a matchup this week that one would think give him the opportunity. I think it's a get-right week with Cousins for Diggs, for Thielen against the New York Giants. Not so good defense. But I wouldn't put money on it. There's no flipping way,
Your
man.
Mason Rudolph, Tim Tebow boy has 74 attempts, so he's already catching up.
Yeah, dude.
And Mason hasn't played. He's only played a game and a half, or 2 games, that's it.
It's bad, again, it's bad quarterback play, it's bad coaching, it's bad game plans, it's bad game scripts, it's bad everything. The purple people eaters should eat themselves right now. It's that bad. And I don't see it getting better, at least not consistently, John. I mean, if you have a great matchup like this week against the Giants, I think you can start both those guys. But if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say one of them's not going to play that good, and one of them probably will.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have Cousins, and right now he's gone to my bench, and I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about cutting him.
Cousins can't even support a tight end with a decent baseline.
I'd rather have Kyle Allen right now.
I guess I would too. I mean,
Kyle Allen has thrown 0 interceptions, 4 touchdowns, and has a passer rate of 118.3.
So bad.
So 10.
So let me ask you a question. On my love scale, how high was Stephon Diggs on my love scale?
Look at 9.5, almost a 10.
Oh no, he was a 15 on a scale of 10. I loved Stephon Diggs, and then Adam Thielen took his manhood, and Kirk Cousins ruined his career.
Well, I don't think it's all Cousins. A lot of it has to do with Shermer. And Cousins is partly responsible. I'm not going to put some blame on him because he's not.
But they've killed that man's confidence.
Oh, they have, because they're not letting him throw anymore.
Right.
But the man's making how much now? $80 million.
But he's not. But he's not confident in the offense. The offensive coordinator obviously isn't confident in him. And this is not 1950. We can't just run the ball. We got to move on.
Yeah, forget
I'm
these
getting
guys.
too upset. I had to trade one of my favorite players of all time because of a poorly run offense by a bunch of idiots on the coaching staff.
So we just knocked down 3 right there.
Fire them all.
Who's the next one?
When I say fire everything, that's what I'm talking about. The coaching staff over in Minnesota.
Fired.
Joe Mixon.
Vince McMahon over here. Joe Mixon.
High hopes. That's what we had for Joe Mixon. But we forgot. You know what? One thing we forgot, John? He plays for the Bengals. We forgot about that part. Are you panicking over Joe Mixon right now? And
Yeah.
if so, how much?
8.5.
8.5. Okay.
8.5, almost 9, and I'll tell you why. It's their line. It's trash. Trash. And Dalton, God help his soul soul as well. He's not the greatest quarterback in the earth. He's really not. But the problem is when you have been sacked the second most in the league, 19 times, that tells you that either the defense is really good on the other side, or the offensive line is that bad. This tells me the offensive line is that bad. In 4 games, that's an average of 5 sacks a game, basically. The line is trash.
Yeah. And Pittsburgh came into that game one of the worst run defenses.
And they did nothing.
And he did nothing.
I think his issue stems from them not addressing the offensive line. And offensive lines are one of those things that just get better overnight. This is a season thing. The Colts went through it years ago. Then they started drafting guys, first-round picks with their offensive line. Look how good their offensive line is now.
Yeah.
So, for me, this is not going to be...
They had offensive linemen retire. Multiple offensive linemen retire. Did Cincinnati. Because it's such a bad franchise. So, but listen, there is hope, guys. There's a little bit of hope. So, guess what Cincinnati doesn't have to do for the rest of the season?
Play?
They do.
I'm not messing with you there.
But not in prime time. And this is a team that is traditionally not ready for prime time, John. Would you agree? Look what they did prime time last night.
Awful.
It was awful. So that's good. Most of their games for the rest of the season are 1 o'clock games where they'll be clustered in with all sorts of other games that are going on. They won't stand out, nothing to see here, and they'll be comfortable because the spotlight won't be on them. So I think that's an advantage for Joe Mixon. The other advantage for Joe Mixon is that he still has some games where he plays against some pretty poor run defenses. Baltimore's not a good run defense, plays them week 6. The Rams do not have a good run defense, plays them week 8. Baltimore again in week 10. Oakland, week 11. Pittsburgh, I don't know, maybe they have a good run defense now, but as far as the whole year is concerned, they're ranked pretty low. They play them week 12, then it gets tougher. The Jets, week 13, Cleveland week 14, and New England week 15. Week 16, championship week, guess who they play?
Arizona?
The Miami Dolphins. things are looking up for Joe Mixon here. I really believe that. My panic level for Joe is at like a 4. I think these guys are going to realize they need to get Mixon out in space a little bit more. They need to start passing the ball to him a little bit more.
It's his target share that scares me too. That's why. I mean, I get it. He can't get target shares if he's blocking back there more too. For Dalton, believe it or not.
Given the slate of games coming up and the defenses that they play, they have a lot of good matchups coming up. Given the fact that I gotta believe that last night was a light bulb moment for that team and that we've really got to start mixing things up. No pun intended, like what I did there. And I think they're going to start mixing things up with Joe Mixon. And I'm at like a 4.
Okay.
I think he'll be fine. I would buy low on him now,
I'm worried about
actually.
him.
Buy low. You know who I'm not so sure I want to buy low on right now? I used to call him the PlayStation, but now he's like the GameCube. Sony Michel is having a rough go of it this year, John. He did have 17 carries this past weekend, but it didn't really amount to much from a fantasy standpoint. 17 carries for 63 yards at 3.7 yards a clip. The week before that, 1.2 yards a carry on only 9 attempts. The week before that, just hit 4 yards a carry on 21 attempts. And then the week before that, against Pittsburgh, 15 carries for 14 yards, John, 0.9 yards per carry. He's been outperformed by Rex Burkhead at times this year, who I didn't think was the talent that Sony is. I don't know if he's hurt. I am at a 10 on Sony Michel.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I am at like a 6 with him. I'm concerned. But I also remember last year, yes, it was his rookie year, but he was a late bloomer last year. As the season went on, he was like a vintage wine. He got better. I don't think it's offensive line woes here. They've only given up 3 sacks, which is really good.
No, I agree, yeah.
I think it's him. It's a little bit of his confidence, I think. They played Buffalo. Yes, that's a good, easy run D, but you gotta remember, they forced him to throw there, but at the same time, Buffalo is a divisional rivalry game. They're going to play him tougher anyway.
But keep in mind, John, he's got the Jets coming up again. He's got Cleveland. He's got Philly, Dallas, all good run defenses.
Yeah, no, I get that too. But I also think teams are still going to respect Brady. Brady's Brady. I'm not saying he's like elite, but he still plays very well for his age. PlayStation last year got better as the season went on, and I see that happening here too. Teams that can't sit there and stack the box against Michel.
And he does seem to be the goal line back.
Yes. That's the inspiring thing. Devlin's gone, so no more vulturing.
No more. Well, I wouldn't say that. Bill Belichick is still the head coach.
Yeah, Devlin is a blow to Michel because he was his, blocking back. But I think Michel's opportunities, if I remember his stats last year, he got better as the season went on, and I see the same thing happening here. As long as the receivers stay healthy and Brady's protected, I think Michel will open up this game more. And then there's going to be those games. They're going to be playing garbage time. They're just going to give it to Michel. Michel, that fourth quarter against Buffalo, he actually had, 30 yards or 40 yards just rushing in that last quarter.
Yeah.
Because they were just, So I see as the season goes on, he'll get better. He has tough matchups, but I still think some of it will be game scripted. The scary part is when he plays a real good defense like the Cowboys, he may be non-existent. He's not someone I trust to start every week just yet.
Yeah.
But I think he will get better as the season goes on.
All right. Let's move on to Josh Jacobs. I am a little nervous about Jacobs. I was glad to see that he got more usage last week. In addition to that, he looked pretty good. From what I saw out there, he was moving pretty good. He was moving the chains. I love what he brings to the table in terms of his pass catching and rushing ability. A little concerned with the way Oakland is utilizing that. But I think they're starting to turn the corner on that. He only got targeted 2 times in the passing game, but he did have 2 catches for 29 yards. And then his second highest carry quantity for the season, he had 23 week 1. This past week he had 17 for 79 yards at 4.6 yards a clip, 4.4 the week before, 8.3 the week before that. So he's efficient. He's running efficiently. He just hadn't, specifically in week 2 and 3, been getting the carries. I think that turns around. I do not start him if I can avoid it this week against Chicago, John. But after that, his schedule's pretty favorable. He has Chicago this week, which is a tough matchup. And then he's got the Jets in week 12. But outside of that, it's pretty good. Green Bay in week 7 is a great matchup. Detroit week 9 is a great matchup. Cincinnati week 11 is a great matchup. So I think things are looking up for Josh Jacobs. He's at a 3 for me. And I wouldn't have said that a week ago. But
No, you were panicking a little bit last week.
I don't want to start him this week if I can avoid it, though, against Chicago in London, on top of everything else.
Yeah, but always those London games.
I know, they are pretty tricky.
It's not what you expect. I don't know why. I have this gut feeling that Oakland wins this week. That's my gut feeling on the London game.
So let me ask you this. Josh Jacobs this week or Marquez Valdez-Scantling?
MVS with Adams out.
MVS has a tough matchup too, though.
I know, but Adams is out, so his target share will completely go up. Same with Allison. I'm not worried about Jacobs, and here's why. I think he's a rookie, like we said. His workload was never huge in college, and they're trying to increase it. I'm not saying that's any excuse for what's happening now, but this team is staying competitive. I know teams don't seem to think that, but they're 2-2. They did play the Chiefs, we forget. Chiefs are very good on offense. But I think Jacobs' usage will go up more. You gotta remember, he's not used to playing a 17-week schedule or 16 games, I should say.
True.
They don't want to
and he's
wear
not
him
used
out.
to 20 carries a game either.
Exactly. So if he's seeing...
This may be a genius move on their part.
From what I'm seeing their usage this week, he gets 15 to 20 attempts. That's good. That's actually really good. But it's the target share I want to see go up just a little bit more. He's seeing about 2 to 3 targets. I'd like to see about 5. 5, it would be a solid floor for him. But I don't think you have anything to worry about here. You got to remember, you got to think from a coach's mind. You don't want to burn the kid out. He's used to a 10-game schedule, even 11 if you count the bowl games and all that.
Yep.
Now he's going to play 16 games, and he was it? Week 2 or week 3 came out of the game. The possible hip injury. They're not going to kill him into the ground.
And then he had a bad. This sounds silly, but he had a bad cold the next week, and let me tell you, that does affect your performance.
It affected both me and you last week.
For sure, yeah.
So that's the thing.
So you're good on Josh Jacobs?
I think as long as his usage stay the way it did.
Did you give us a number on him? I can't remember.
I would say a 4, if not a 3.
So we're at the same spot there. So moving on to Jacksonville, John. I felt a little guilty putting this guy on the list, given that the game that he had this week just blew up. 29 carries for 225 yards, 2 receptions for 20 yards on top of that. Leonard Fournette. Prior to that, though, John, not too good. A little concerning. 13 for 66, 15 for 47, 15 for 66, and that was on literally one play. He had -2 yards on 14 carries and then got a 68-yard run. Has not, to date, still caught ran for or caught a touchdown. 0 touchdowns for Fournette this year. That's a big concern for me. So where are you at with Lenny this year, and are you panicking?
I'm not panicking on Lenny. I know he's got some tough matchups, especially between the Colts again.
He's got New Orleans coming up, which is just might as well be just a death blow right there.
No, not necessarily.
Dude, they shut down Ezekiel flipping Elliott.
I know, but sometimes these games are weird. I think as long as Minshew...
He's got the Jets coming up.
If Minshew is playing the way he does, teams are going to respect the pass, which will open up the run. It's Lenny's usage. This week was the best usage he's seen all year. And I'm not saying getting 25, 26 attempts. He's got to be in that high teens. I would say anything over 15 is good.
He played the 4th worst run defense, too, this week.
His target share has gone up compared to last year. So that's an inspiring thing right there. So I think as long as Minshew can keep playing and keep teams on their heels, it's going to keep Lenny decent as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, Minshew has 7 touchdowns and 1 interception.
He's playing well. He's not going off, but he's playing well.
No, but he's playing well.
He's a 20 to 25 point a week fantasy quarterback, which is just fine, I'm not too concerned about Fournette. Hopefully the fact that Raquel Armstead, a.k.a. Rock Armstead, was getting some usage this week, I think that might have stoked a flame in Lenny. once again, he was not going down on first contact. He refused this week to go down on first contact, which is what you expect from Leonard Fournette, the beast that he is. I'm a little concerned that he's got 3 really tough matchups in really important, that really important meaty part of the schedule in fantasy where, it can make or break your playoff hopes against New Orleans in week 6, against the Jets in week 8, and against Tampa, who is a surprisingly good run defense in the first week of the playoffs, John. Those are scary situations, but defenses change. That Tampa could be an easy matchup by the time that time comes around. Who knows?
Yeah, look at Dallas last year. They flipped the switch. They started off as like a middle-of-pack defense last year, and were one of the top 5 Ds at the end of the season last year.
So Lenny's at, I would have him at a 4. His usage keeps his floor relatively high.
Yeah.
And obviously we saw his ceiling this week. That's very high as well. So I'm only at a 4 for Mr. Fournette. Deshaun Watson. I really wanted to draft Deshaun Watson this year. And kind of glad I didn't so far. Another situation, John, where the offensive line is just atrocious. They added Laramie Tunsil.
Did nothing.
Did nothing. He's just getting destroyed out there. I'm really, really concerned with Deshaun Watson. They had an opportunity to bolster this offensive line, and they tried with Tunsil. It's just not working. Do you see an end in sight here? I see some good matchups on the horizon, and I hope... this week, John, I really think when he goes up against Atlanta, that's a get-right game. The next week, Kansas City, that's a great matchup. Indy's a solid matchup. Oakland's a great matchup. So based on that, I think you're going to see Deshaun come back to form. He doesn't really have a tough matchup until week 13 against New England.
His line is trash, but he's got some...
And then week 14 against Denver as well.
And they just lost Chubb, so they're not going to be as threatening.
True.
Except for
so really,
secondary.
his one tough matchup for the remainder of the year is New England in Week 13, and who knows what they're going to be like by then. I'm at like a 2 on Deshaun. I really think he's going to turn it around. I think it starts this week.
I'm at like a 4, maybe a 5. And I would say middle of the pack for me there. And the only reason I say that is the amount of sacks. The Texans have given up the 3rd most sacks. The other part of it is... And why I'm going to rate panic is because Watson's got the Konami code. So even if he can break some of these tackles and he can get out of the pocket, he can rush for some. He has not rushed as much as he has in the past.
Yeah.
But he does have those Konami legs that can change that. So that's a very good sign right there for him not to panic over. You have a lot of pocket passers that don't have the legs, but he obviously does. So I think he has a better chance of having more success than he does failure.
So we'll tie him in with DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins, honestly, is at a 1 for me. I know there's a lot of panic going on with him. Not really performing to the level that we expect from him.
But his target share is high.
Target share's there. He did face the 4th best team defense against wide receivers in Carolina, surprisingly. Again, faces Atlanta, Kansas City, Indy, the same teams that obviously Deshaun Watson is going to be wheels up from here, and a big part of that is going to be because of DeAndre Hopkins. And I would try to buy low on Will Fuller right now as well, because I think Will Fuller's going to toast some of these defenses. Not where...
So
Todd Gurley, moving on to Todd the Bod. Came back to earth a little bit this week, John, thanks to some receiving work. He did get 7 catches for 54 yards. But 5 carries for 16 yards. The 2 touchdowns really saved his day this week. He has not been the Todd Gurley of old. And I think everybody thought that they were getting a steal where they drafted him in the early 2nd round. But he's playing like an early 2nd round guy, if not a late 2nd round guy. Are you panicking?
I'm not a Gurley owner, so I'm not panicking. But,
well, this is for our listeners.
I know this week his attempts were limited by they were behind 21-0. They were throwing the ball, trying to catch up, and it actually worked out for him. I mean, Goff had, 15 attempts? Something crazy like that. 500-something yards. But Gurley got his usage in the passing game, that helped his week. The touchdowns helped his week. I do agree there should be some concern with Gurley, but he is still part of one of their focal points of their offense. It is a little concerning that his attempts are lower than they have been last year, but I think deep down they're not being honest with us how Gurley is. When they were talking before how he's hurt, I don't think they were being completely honest. I think they're limiting him so that they don't lose him like they did last year. And I think at the same time, you're not going to see those numbers you did last year. I think they're just kind of spreading the love more this year. I see Gurley more as an RB2, so if you drafted him as an RB1, yeah, you should have some panic.
Yeah.
But his floor has been decent. I think he's been averaging, about 12 to 15 points a week. You're just not going to get that 30, 40 points.
I think that's all you're getting out of him this year, and I don't think that's his floor either. I think his floor's lower than that. If you look at his schedule for the rest of the year, John, his opponent's rank for the rest of the year is 25th, 32nd being the hardest, so that's pretty hard. It's not great. He does have a few pretty sweet matchups peppered in against Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, but has Pittsburgh turned the corner? We'll see. But he's got some really hard ones too. Week 6 against San Fran, Week 11 against Chicago is going to be tough. And the one thing that concerns me the most, John, is that Week 15 he's got Dallas and Week 16 he's got San Fran again. That's your fantasy championship and your fantasy semifinals. That's a big concern for me. I would try to sell Gurley if I was a Gurley owner right now. My panic level for him is probably a 6 or a 7. And only not higher because I think he does give you 12 to 15 a week by and large. But once you get in the fantasy playoffs, man, if Dallas and San Fran's defenses are still healthy and they're still ranked...
San Fran's undefeated.
San Fran's number 1 against the run. And Dallas is, I think, number 7.
Isn't that odd how they were one of the worst teams last year? So a complete flip there.
So I'm a little concerned about Todd Gurley, needless to say. I'm going to let you talk about your boy Chris Carson. Where are you after this pretty good week where he was playing for his football life, so to speak? Where do you stand on Chris Carson, keeping in mind that Rashad Penny could be back as early as Thursday?
He could be back as early as Thursday. I still think this is Carson's job to lose. Panic for me is about mid-level 5. His target shares have gone up from last year. The fumbles are the concerning part.
Won a game up until this week.
Yeah. That is the concerning part with him. But other than that, he's been fending off Penny. And the good thing if you're a Carson owner was this Penny injury because it put a little step into him knowing that if Penny comes back, he could take his job. And I think if Carson loses his job, it's not going to be till at least mid-year. But I'd be if he's your RB1, yeah, I'd be panicking. RB2, not so much.
I'm at a 10.
Wow, really?
Yep. He's the rest of the season, his remaining opponent's rank is 29th. So if you're wondering, that's the 3rd hardest in the league. For a guy that's just not really performing all that well right now. Yes, he had a good week this week, but John touched on the fumbles. Can't hold on to the ball. That's a problem. Week 3, 3.5 yards a carry. Week 1, 3.1 yards per carry. Week 2, he just barely hit 4. I mean, he looked good this week. 22 carries for 104 yards. 4 receptions for 41 yards. I think his floor is decent because of his work in the passing game, but we don't know how much Rashad Penny is going to carve into that. I don't know, man. I think it's a split workload. Maybe not this week, but starting the week after that, I think it is. And if you look at Rashad Penny, so far this year, he's only played a couple games, but week 2 he had 6.2 yards per carry, man. He looked good. He got a goal line carry. He's just a better, younger version of Chris Carson. And when you look at the schedule being that difficult, the 3rd most difficult for the remainder of the season, specifically look at Week 9 against Tampa, really good run D. Week 10 against San Fran. Week 12 against Pittsburgh. That's because they have a bye Week 11. That's 3 weeks in a row, John, against a top 3 run defense, it's not looking good for Chris Carson for the rest of the season. That's if he even keeps the job.
I think Carson has a. And here's a little more for me to elaborate on. I think Carson, yeah, you have to be as worried as Penny, but at the same time, some of these hard run Ds are not going to focus on him as much. And the reason I say that is Russell Wilson is having a good season. A very, very good season.
But you're the matchup guy. You're the guy
I know. But at the same time, if you are a run defense and you have Russell Wilson, who is another Konami code, he can run with his legs.
Not as much anymore.
He has the highest completion percentage in the league. He's sitting at 72.9. That's disgusting. So you have.
So that just speaks to the fact that when they can shut down the run, these teams that can shut down the run, he's just going to pass more.
Yeah,
that's all that. I don't know why everybody makes excuses for Chris Carson.
No, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, here's his.
You kind of are, though.
I have a mid-level. Carson was a walk-on to this team. He wasn't drafted.
Right, and you know why? Because he's not very talented. And he's proven that so far this year, specifically weeks 1 through 3. He had a good week this week. And by God, if he didn't, John, it would have been curtains for him. Would you agree?
If it wasn't for the touchdowns, it's possible, yes.
So I think you combine the fact that Rashad Penny, I think you would also agree, Rashad Penny's going to eat into his touches. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, I didn't say he wouldn't eat into his touches, but what has been his savior so far was Penny missing 2 weeks, almost 3.
Right. So Penny will be back, and he faces a really hard slate of run defenses. I just think it's curtains for him this season. And I don't think he's... I mean, if this was Zeke Elliott, if this was, a top... Not even Todd Gurley. If this was Saquon Barkley, I wouldn't be as worried. But he's not those guys.
No, he's not. But he also took down other people like Eddie Lacy and stuff, people that were good, and then... Hey,
you're hanging your hat on it. You're hanging your hat on the fact that he took Eddie Lacy's job. Folks, I guess that's all you need to know.
No, I'm just saying that this guy was a walk-on. He fought for his job. He's going to keep fighting for his job. I'm not saying he's not going to lose his job eventually. I'm just saying that in the next couple weeks, no. Possibly by mid-season, like I said, yes.
Sell high, folks. Sell high. This is the week. He had a great week this week. Sell that guy.
Who's the next guy?
A guy that has a good pedigree, but just hasn't really performed this year, and that's O.J. Howard. I just packaged O.J. Howard with Mo Sanu and a 4th-round pick to get Tyler Boyd and a 9th-round pick. I sold as high as I could because I don't think it's going to get much higher, John. I think O.J. Howard it's a 10 for me. I'm not even going to break down the schedule. I'm not even going to break down the stats. The big concern here, John, is while I think he will have a couple of boom games, I just don't think Bruce Arians likes him on a personal level. These old bullheaded coaches, they just don't understand how that you have to motivate people differently now. And O.J. Howard is an elite level talent, but I just don't feel like Bruce Arians wants to utilize him because of a personal issue. I just don't think he likes him personally. Maybe he doesn't like his work ethic. Maybe he doesn't like his attitude. But Antonio Brown had a pretty bad attitude last year. Didn't mean they didn't throw the ball to him. And I don't even know that any of those things are the case. But I just think old Whisker Biscuit, there's something about O.J. Howard that he doesn't like. And he doesn't want him to be a part of the game plan. I wouldn't be surprised if O.J. Howard got traded this year, man. I just get that vibe. Have you ever worked with somebody that first impression they got of you was bad, so they never were going to give you a chance? You ever worked with somebody like that?
Yeah.
I think we all have. And I think that's, my gut tells me, here at the Working Class Podcast, sometimes it's not about stats. My gut tells me that that's the situation here. I'm at an 11 for O.J. Howard, and I couldn't get him off my team fast enough, to be honest with you.
I would be worried about O.J. Howard as well. I mean, we're through 4 games now, and he has a total of 12 targets. That's no level of involvement in this offense. This is like...
And Jameis Winston just went off. He went off, John. He had a career day.
Yep.
And O.J. Howard,
and O.J. Howard
did not benefit in the least. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, and Howard's starting. Cameron Brake's just like a package deal. Like when he comes in certain packages, and he has 9 receptions.
He's the goal line tight end.
Yeah, he has 9 targets, and the funny thing about that is, like I said, he comes in certain packages.
Yeah.
O.J. Howard is starting. He has 12 targets. You have people with more targets. Dawson Knox out of Buffalo has 13 targets.
And he's not half the
As
athlete
talent.
or the play. O.J. Howard is the best all-around talent on that offense.
The Saints, who barely ever throw to the tight end, Jared Cook has 18.
Yeah.
Trey Burton, who missed a game, and I believe a game, I haven't seen much from him. He has 11 targets.
Will Dissly isn't a third of the talent that O.J. Howard is, and he's dominating him in the stat line.
How about this one? Jordan Akins from Houston.
Who?
Exactly.
Like, who even like? I'm speechless right now.
Yeah, Jordan Akins, their tight end in Houston, who you never hear about, has 14 targets.
That's just awful.
So
I would sell guys. I would sell O.J. Howard. Maybe you can get a good deal like I got. Maybe not. I would honestly just look at the teams that have a weakness at tight end. Look at the teams that have a tight end coming up on bye. You know, like Evan Ingram. Is he on a bye soon? Just look at guys that have top tight ends and try to sell O.J. Howard as a guy that's going to bounce back.
I would rather have Noah Fant here.
I would rather have almost anybody other than O.J. Howard, and that sickens me. It twists my stomach in knots that I even am saying that. But when the coach doesn't like you, that's just something you can't come back from, no matter how talented you are.
You'll just be like second fiddle all the time.
And I think that's a situation here. So let's go to our last guy, guy that shares the same name as me, Mr. DJ Moore. Is DJ Moore, John, in a situation like Juju Smith-Schuster, where the quarterback change has changed the trajectory of his season?
Yes.
Elaborate, please.
Like I said before, Kyle Allen has a chemistry with Curtis Samuel, and since Kyle Allen has started, Curtis Samuel's target share has gone up. But we expect a big example. But he has a decent floor of 5 to 7 targets with Kyle Allen. Moore has trended down since Cam Newton's been out, and Cam Newton's injury can be as soon as 2 more weeks, up to another 6. The Liz Frank injury is not something to take lightly.
It could. I wouldn't be surprised if one day they say shutting him down for the year.
Yes, that could happen.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because he has opted out of surgery. This is something he had surgery for, but he opted out. But they're not rushing him back either because they're still playing decent.
I think he's back week 11 at Atlanta.
You think that late?
I think so.
I'm thinking more like week 10.
If they need him. If they start losing, John.
Yeah.
So, he's not going to be back week 5 against Jacksonville, which is actually a really good matchup for DJ Moore. So, the next couple weeks are pretty good for Moore. Although, Houston was a pretty good matchup, too, and he stunk. He's not going to be back for Tampa. That's going to be too soon. And then the next 3 games, John, San Francisco, Tennessee, and Green Bay. Those are not good matchups. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see Cam back until week 11. And honestly, if they're sunk by then, if they lose every game until then, they might shut him down for the season. I don't see why they wouldn't. I'm at a 9 on DJ Moore. As much as I love this guy, when you get, unless John, there is a new hope on the horizon. If Allen does not perform well and Mr. Will Grier starts to pick up the offense a little bit more, Will Grier could change the trajectory back.
He could. Will Grier's got a very, very good deep ball. I don't know if any of you guys follow college football. Will Grier was averaging like 300 yards a game easily.
So if my question for you, John, and I'll let you talk more about Grier because you are a big fan of his, my question for you is, let's say Allen has a stinker this week against a pretty good matchup against Jacksonville's secondary that has against Tampa's secondary that has underperformed this year. Do you think after the Tampa Bay bye, week 6, if he still isn't performing well, that you see Will Grier in week 8?
It's possible. I don't think so. It wouldn't be till after the bye, I think, if you see Grier. And the reason I say that, they're tailoring this game to Kyle Allen. It's kind of like Mason Rudolph, but he's not trying to make the deep throws as much. But Kyle Allen, look at McCaffrey's usage. It is through the roof. Through the roof. It really is.
Yeah.
His attempts are top of the league. I mean, he's leading the league in rushing yards. His target share's high. They've built this offense around Allen, but he's not the one that they're focused on. It's McCaffrey. So as long as he doesn't start screwing up targets to McCaffrey, he'll start.
Yeah,
but he's got to make those. He's got to make those throws though to like a Olsen, a DJ Moore.
So that even furthers the bad news for DJ Moore. Then I mean, if you think Allen's going to stay out there, it's pretty obvious that Samuel has pretty good chemistry with Allen, and Moore doesn't have much at all, and that could change. Who knows? Maybe Moore starts to get more targets, but it's not looking like that. So my concern is pretty high for DJ Moore. So that's all we got for today for our panic attack. Next week we're gonna do a similar type of show on for our Wednesday show, and that's what was it again, John? It's sell high or stand by. So are you selling high on guys, or are you gonna stick with them? And then obviously tomorrow we will have our predictions and projections show for week 5. Hard to believe week 5 is already here. So before we go, I just want to take a moment to mention our GoFundMe page at www.gofundme.com/armchair-fantasy-football-podcast. If you guys could support us by making a donation and sharing it with your network, we would greatly appreciate it. We don't get paid for this, guys, and we love doing it, but eventually we would like to make it a career. So if you could help support the Working Class Podcast and help us to continue to provide great content and keep our blue-collar baller dream alive, we would sincerely appreciate it. Even if you could just share the GoFundMe page, posts, and tweets, it would be infinitely appreciated. So that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow when we get you guys ready for week 5. We'll have a special guest, Noah. He's going to return. He's going to pop in with us, and I'm going to try to teach that kid how to play fantasy football. But
but yeah, you keep trading with him.
You know, when
you want him to play fantasy football because you keep making these trades.
When you got a good old standby, John, you just keep going back to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good point.
But yeah, no, Noah's he's a good egg. He likes to trade, and I'm all about that trade life. So I got nothing bad to say there. He's got a few weird takes like Dallas's quote unquote bad defense, but
yeah, I don't know where he got that.
I don't know.
If you watched the games last year, they were bad the first half.
One thing I noticed about Noah, his takes are mostly emotionally driven. They're not always driven by stats or knowledge or homework or.
I'm a statistics guy, always have been. But every once in a while, it's a gut feeling, like me and you have said. You have to go with that gut.
Yes, but we will have Noah's emotionally driven takes here tomorrow, and it'll be fun. So it's always good to have some guests with us. So we'll catch you guys tomorrow, and catch you on the flip side.
See you guys soon.
Peace.